Larry Dyer of the state's Forestry Bureau Entomology Department is one of those involved in the battle of the budworm. He and other department workers have spent the past months gathering samples of the trees infested by the budworm and then analyzing the growth stages of the budworm. Entomologist Henry Triol explained.
Well, right now he is removing relatively small budworm from needles. They hatch in the late fall and overwinter in a little silken web. And in the spring, roughly this time of year, they come out of the webs and go into these old needles and make a small mine or feeding chamber. And he's going through kind of the tedious job of digging them out of these little chambers.
What stage are they in right now?
Well, the ones that Larry is working with right now are second and third stage or instar larvae. And they're no more than, say, 1/8 of an inch long.
The Forestry Bureau has been spraying the budworm here in Maine since the mid-1950s on an as-needed basis. But now the problem has reached the crisis stage, and this year's spraying project is a mammoth one.
Well, it's roughly 4 or 5 times as great as any single project we've ever had before. We're dealing with roughly 2.2 million acres this year. And I believe the largest project we've ever had in the past is a little over 500,000 acres.
What happens if you don't catch the spruce budworm at the right stage? Are you lost for the whole summer and for that year?
Well, there are optimal points to spray it depending on the chemical. And this year we're using 3 chemicals and there are 2 different spray timings.
It's hard to imagine how something as tiny as the spruce budworm could wreak such havoc, but it has. And now only a multi-million-dollar spraying effort can end the crisis. Bob Steele, TV2 News.
Best estimate of the professionals is that we will have about 3.5 million acres heavily infested, and of that about 1.2 million acres may lose up to 95% of the balsam fir and 60% of the spruce volume that's standing today on that land.
If this is carried over another year, say 1976, what will happen at that point?
I would about quadruple the losses, because we have about 800,000 acres that is just one step behind in its severeness.
Some of the opponents to spraying say that the spruce budworm problem will handle itself if left alone eventually. Is that a fact?
That is a fact. The only problem is that we have an industry. 50% of our entire wood industry is dependent upon spruce and fir. 1 out of every 4 trees cut in the state of Maine today is a fir tree. And if we eliminate this vast resource, one of these days, about 5 to 7 years from now, there just will not be the spruce fir resource to support the industry we have today.
It's estimated to cost $5 to $6 million to spray to control the budworm this year. Governor Longley has indicated that he doesn't think the state should pick up half of that, as was indicated by the lumber industry. He says that he has put aside $1 million to contribute to that. Will the industry come along with the other $4 or $5 million of its share, and will they do it gladly?
Well, I would say they would do it reluctantly, because of the fact that they are paying taxes on that land to the state, and they believe they should get some recompense for it. The present laws or bills that are in the legislative hopper indicate that of the $6 million supposed to come from state or private sources, approximately half would come from the state and the other half would be an additional assessment on forest land. The other problem we have is that all of these companies and landowners are not the same as far as their economic situations. We have some that simply sell standing trees. Others take those standing trees and manufacture them into pulp and paper products or lumber. And we have about 3,800 landowners in that area that's considered to be sprayable that are going to be affected. And the dilemma is that in the long run, the state is going to lose a lot of general fund tax revenue if you don't have the trees to make the product. That's the problem.
Longley said the Conservation Department has developed a reasonable long-term solution to the spruce budworm situation. He had praise for Commissioner Barringer and other state workers who developed the plan, and said it will give Maine people some assurances the problem will be dealt with.
This will mark the first time we've come to grips with the issue of the public interest and determine what the state's fair share of the cost should be, and make this determination within government instead of forces outside of government suggesting what the state's responsibility is.
The basic plan would have landowners bear most of the cost for spraying the budworm, with the state paying a share as well. But there would also be incentives built in to encourage timber salvage and careful spraying. Commissioner Barringer said the plan is needed.
What I'd like to do is to formulate a program that creates positive financial incentives to absolutely minimize the spraying that's done and to guarantee that the trees that are infested and that will die will be salvaged, marketed properly, and that the next generation of trees that grows in the Maine forest will be as insusceptible to budworm as we can possibly make them as a matter of public policy.
Don Carrigan, TV2 News.